Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukha bhag bhavet. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat. May all be happy. May no one suffer from illness. May only see goodness everywhere. May no one be subject to misery. May there be peace, abiding peace everywhere by God's grace. This is an ancient prayer which we have in Hinduism. There is one sentence also I could have added. Sarve sadbhavam apnautu. May all have right thinking. There are so many people who due to their wrong thinking suffer and make others suffer also. And the subject of my talk this evening has to do with the mind. And the subject is mind, our inseparable companion. I've been here in Seattle. I don't exactly remember the number of years, but nearly 50 years. I was sent from India by our headquarters to serve the children of God in this country. And during all these years, I have come to know many, many people. Sometimes it is even difficult for me to remember the names of all those people. Several thousand people I have come to know. And God has sent me to so many countries from here. Everywhere I went on invitation from the people of different countries. This is what I had to do. Many years ago, we had a member who was quite close and helpful. One day he came to me and said to me, Swami, I'll be away from Seattle for 1 month. I said, where are you going? He said, I am going to Mojave Desert. I said, why are you going to the desert? Then he said, because I want to be alone. I don't want to be disturbed by anybody. Then he said, I don't want to be even disturbed by my wife's presence. That's why I'm going there alone. My wife will be here. I'll be all alone there. Then I said to him, are you sure you'll be all alone there? He said, yes, Swami, I'll be all alone. But he was wrong. After 7 or 8 days, he returned to Seattle. And I said, you were supposed to be on your vacation for 1 month. How come you are back so soon? Then he said, when I was there in Mojave Desert, in a very solitary place, gradually my mind started giving me problems, as a result of which I had to come back, he told me. Yes, a person cannot be alone. The person who may be thinking that he or she is alone. No. Always that person's mind is present there with that person. Our mind is our eternal companion, so to say, or inseparable companion, not eternal, inseparable companion. For example, a man most probably has been punished and a sentence takes him to a solitary prison. One may think that he is there alone, but no, his mind is with him. He cannot get rid of his mind. That mind always is there with him. And what is mind is a mystery to many cultures. Is it really a mystery? Mystery is something which you cannot know about. But so far as Hinduism is concerned, the mind is not a mystery. According to the most ancient school of religious philosophy which is there in India, and there are 6 such systems of philosophy, and this one is called Sankhya philosophy. The word Sankhya means something which explains everything clearly. According to this school, at the beginning there was consciousness and there was matter. There was no person there was no God or anything. Consciousness was there, called Purusha, and Prakriti, that means nature, that is Mother Nature. And Prakriti or Mother Nature is unconscious. At the beginning it was unconscious. Then it borrowed consciousness from Purusha and started acting differently. It started evolving, changing, according to this school of philosophy. And the word Prakriti also means a female, because it is this primordial nature, which is primordial matter, finer than any matter that we can conceive of. That matter eventually became this world which we know. It is like this matter gave birth to this world, containing all the different things. And in Sanskrit, which is the ancient language of India, every word has a gender. Prakriti or Mother Nature has feminine gender. Aside from the fact that it is like mother giving birth to children, Prakriti has given birth to this creation, having been influenced by Purusha, the male person, so to say. Purusha means consciousness, primordial consciousness. Prakriti means primordial matter. So this primordial matter gradually changed and evolved, and by borrowing consciousness from Purusha, and then became this world. So what about mind, which I am going to discuss this evening, about? Mind is an evolved form of Prakriti. As Prakriti is matter, the mind is also matter. The Western philosophers, psychologists, they have been trying to know what the mind is. Many of them think that the mind is located somewhere inside the brain of a person. But according to Hinduism, mind is everywhere in a person's body, not only in the brain. Where is the mind located? All over the body. All over the body it is located. And what is the main function of the mind? The main function of the conscious mind is knowing. So that's why if a mosquito bites a person somewhere in his or her feet, then that person gets to know about that mosquito bite. How is it possible? Because the mind is present there, that's why the mind gets to know. And what is the function of the mind? The main function of the mind is knowing. One may say, no, feeling, willing and thinking, these are also functions of the mind. Those are acquainted with Western psychology. But in Hinduism it is said that knowing, feeling, willing and thinking are no other than knowing. A person who thinks he does not know, then he at least knows that he does not know something. So the main function of the mind is knowing. So even when we say that we don't know anything, we have to know that we don't know anything. So that is the main function of the mind. Another speciality of mind is that it takes the form of the object known. So, how does that happen? I will explain that to you slowly. That's why it is said that the mind has vritti, that is, it takes the form of the object which it has come to know. And the mind in Hinduism is called antakaranam, the internal instrument, sense organ, so to say. And it consists of manas, buddhi, chitta and ahankara. Manas means mind, buddhi means intellect, chitta means memorizing power, and ahankara means ego. It is the same antakarana which is given different names. Suppose a person is seeing a mound of earth in partial darkness. And that person is not sure what it is. At least that person knows that there is something there. So this is the function of the manas. There is something there, that much is known. But what it is not known. And then by thinking, person knows is this a mound of earth or is it a bear sitting there? Then the antakarana starts functioning differently. It starts analyzing the object known by the mind. Is it a mound of earth or is it a bear sitting there. Then through analysis the antakaranam gets to know that it cannot be a bear, because this is the season when the bears go to sleep, they are in hibernation. So it must be a mound of earth. So this is the function of the antakaranam, which is called intellect. Intellectually we understand that this is a mound of earth and not a bear. And what is chitta? Chitta is that capacity of the inner instrument of knowing, which is antakarana. With the help of which one can remember the past events. Did I drink coffee in the morning? Well, to know that I have to take the help of my mind. Then the mind will say, yes, I drank a cup of coffee. This function of the mind, that means the capacity to remember things, that is, according to that function, the mind is called chitta at that time. Antakaranam, inner instrument of knowing things, is called chitta. And then ahankara means ego. Who drank that cup of coffee in the morning? Then it is the antakaranam which says, it is I who did it. That ego. It is ego of a person which is in that present in the inner instrument of knowing, which roughly is called the mind. That ego has a name in Sanskrit which is called ahankara. It is actually a thought of the antakarana. Manas, buddhi, chitta and ahankara. These are the functions of the inner instrument of knowing. We are supposed to have sense organs. How many sense organs are there? Chakshu, karna, nasika, jiva, tvak. That means the organ of sight, organ of hearing, organ of smelling, organ of tasting, and the organ of touching. So these are the 5 sense organs. And then there are 5 motor organs with the help of which a person functions. That is vak, pani, pada, payu, upastha. That means that ability to speak, that is that organ which enables a person to speak, that organ is called vak. Pani, that means the organ which helps a person to grab things, that means that person's hands, that is another organ. Then another organ is there, or 2 organs are there which helps a person to move around. That means that person's feet, pada, and payu. Payu is that organ in a person's body which is the anus. The digested food go out of the body, unnecessary stuff, and to the anus, and the anus is considered an organ. This is called a motor organ. And another organ is there which is used to reproduce children. That is also another motor organ. Bhak, Pani, Pada, Payu, Upastha. So these 5 motor organs and 5 sense organs. Other than these 10, there is another organ which is called inner organ. Antakaranam. Anta means inner, karanam means organ, so to say. In this particular case, that's what it means. So there are 11 organs with the help of which a person functions. And these are the organs which help us to know things. I told you that the mind is located all over the body. That is the view of Hindu psychology. And what about the things which are outside the body? The mind goes out through the sense organs, such as the eyes, and goes out through that sense organ. Those sense organs are like so many windows through which the mind, which remains inside the body, goes out. So when a person sees a tiger outside, then that person's mind goes out through that door which is the organ of sight. And goes out, and what does it do? It covers up that object, unknown object. And by covering it up, it gets to know what that is. Also, this consciousness I talked about, let me talk a little bit about that. So when that mind goes out through a window, such as the eye, or even the skin, or even the organ of hearing, and it goes out and takes the form of that object. By hearing, you can hear the sound that is being produced outside. By skin, you get to know the object which your skin is touching. And by tasting some food, you get to know some food that your tongue is tasting. And there is a fragrant rose, that smell of the rose, that is known by that sense organ of smell. So I talked about consciousness, which is the nature of Purusha, according to Sankhya philosophy. Consciousness. This, according to our view, this consciousness is all-pervading. Without consciousness, Prakriti, which is primordial matter, could not have changed. So everything has consciousness, hidden in Prakriti, and it is all-pervading in this world. So this consciousness has its counterpart in Sanskrit, which is called Chaitanya. There is consciousness associated with an object. And that is called Vishaya Chaitanya. Object means a Vishaya. And the mind also has consciousness. So it is called Pramana Chaitanya. And behind all these two, there is something which knows everything, the Pramatri Chaitanya. There are three kinds of consciousness. When the mind goes out to an object which is outside, then it covers up that object. And that object has consciousness, that is called Vishaya Chaitanya. And the mind goes and takes the form of that object, that is called Pramana Chaitanya. And the owner of that mind has consciousness, which is called Pramatri Chaitanya. That's how we get to know things. The consciousness associated with the object, the consciousness associated with the mind, and the consciousness associated with the knower. That means these three. With the help of these three, one gets to know an object. It is also said that as long as we are alive, the mind functions that way. But when a person dies, when we die, what happens to our minds? The mind goes on existing, even though our physical bodies are gone, the mind goes on existing. Our minds go on existing. So when a person dies, his physical body is dead, but his mind is still there. That mind forms a subtle body, that is called Sukshma Sharira, that goes on existing. And in that mind, the ego is there. That person goes on existing. I exist. A person who has ego, he knows that. But according to Hinduism, our true existence is beyond our ego. Because the owner and the object owned cannot be the same. If I own a car, I have to be different from that car because I am the owner. In the same way, when I own my physical body, I cannot be my physical body. As I am the owner of this physical body, I should be different from it. In the same way, I cannot be the sense organs because I own them. I cannot be the motor organs also because I own all of them. What about the mind, the antakaranam? Yes, we cannot be our minds also. Because as owners of our minds, we have to be different from the antakaranam or the mind. And our sense of individual existence is a thought of our conscious mind. I, which is called the ego. And that's not what we really are. That's what our scriptures teach us. Sri Ramakrishna used to say, Naham, Naham, Tuhu, Tuhu. He was a divine incarnation. He would let us know the highest truths that we have in our scriptures. Naham, not I, but thou. Thou means divinity. We are not our ego. We are beyond it. We are like so many waves in the infinite ocean of divinity. And as long as we are identified with our forms, we think that we are waves, individual waves. But if we forget, if we don't identify with our forms, then we know that now we are that is our form, we are not what that form is. Then there remains only that infinite ocean, which is divinity. From that, our scriptures say, Sarvam khalu idam brahma. Everything is no other than divinity. Divinity is beyond time, space and causation. Divinity is existence, chit, consciousness, and peace, or anandam. That is divinity. We are trying to describe something which cannot be described through words, which is abang manasogocharam. That divinity cannot be described through words, cannot be conceived of by ordinary minds, and cannot be talked about. Still we try. A person says, I have pain in my stomach. That pain cannot be described or cannot be seen by others. But that person can feel it. So also, our ego is there in us and we feel that the ego is there. It is this ego which separates us from everything else what it is not. Truly speaking, we are beyond our ego. We are divinity. That's why when a young man joined our order in India, and elderly Swami asked him, do you know the name of the organization which you have joined, monastic order? And the young man said, yes, it is called Ramakrishna Mission. And the elderly monk said, no, it is not Ramakrishna Mission, it is Ramakrishna Machine. What kind of machine? Ego-crushing machine. That you identify with your mind and you think that you are different from others as long as your ego is there. But you have to transcend your ego and get to know what you really are. And what you really are is divinity. So, having been in the order, you will gradually, eventually, you will get to know that you are divinity. This is the highest teaching of Hinduism or Vedanta. When a person dies, his physical body is gone, but the mental body, the subtle body remains. So ego also remains. And eventually that ego which is in the subtle body takes a physical form also. And it is the thought of coming back to this world which brings a person to this world after death. When I was a young boy, I used to know a doctor in our hometown. He was the most famous doctor, but he was never married. And most probably he had some cancer of his stomach or something. He used to smoke a lot. And as a result, he died. So when people would go to see him, he would tell everyone, can you give me a cigar? That desire for cigar is still there, tobacco. Because his mind is there and his ego is there. And it is this thought which will bring him back to this world. Most probably he will be born in a cigar factory or wherever cigars are available. As long as the mind is there, the ego is there. And we cannot get rid of it. And how the mind functions, some of those things I have tried to discuss. And I have learned those things from our scriptures. Thank you all so much for being patient. May the blessing of God be upon us, and may we have peace.